Pushkin.
Oh, wow.
How are you?
The man, the myth, the legend.
Is somebody else here?
The guy behind you. I was talking about the guy behind you. Couldn't be you. No, you, of course. Wow. Great to meet you.
Likewise.
Great to meet you. Where are you at in the world of things?
Actually in the Kiss warehouse.
That has to be a incredible place.
It is. It's like Superman's Fortress of Solitude.
Oh man. How long have you guys had like a warehouse?
Oh, since pretty much the beginning of the band, although that's changed over the years. Location has changed over the years, but we've always needed a place not only for musical instruments, but for stage pieces and all the miscellaneous stuff that goes along with a tour.
Wow. Do you ever, I mean, you know, talking to you or anyone else from Kiss, it's in a weird way, like talking to anyone from, you know, like Paul or Ringo or Mick or Keith or even Ronnie. It's like you guys have had such long and storied careers and been asked everything. But I have to imagine every once in a while going through the warehouse, there's something you see that you're shocked by or just didn't remember or you're surprised to see or find.
Mainly, it's just, I think I have a really good memory, and yet sometimes friends of mine will say, remember in New York when we had dinner with so-and-so and so-and-so? And I'm like, for the life of me, I can't remember. So in terms of the band, my memory is really, really pretty strong. You know, we can talk about, you know, the show that we did at the Capitol Center in Largo, Maryland, outside DC, or we could talk about, you know, playing the Stanley Warner Theater in Pittsburgh or the Tower Theater. You know, my memory is, at least with the band, very, I'm quite lucid.
Why do you think the band is the one part that you're able to compartmentalize and remember every little bit of it?
I guess, you know, I would think that if you visit Disneyland, you'll remember everything you did. And I've been living in Disneyland.
That's a great way to put it. It's even the early days of the band, pre Alive, when you guys you know, Alive, obviously, if most people who are at least our fans will know Alive is really when the band hits and you guys break. But it seems like even before that, like you guys were really, I mean, somehow living, you know, the rock star lifestyle. Like you guys were, in a sense, it almost appeared as if you guys had made it. The way, you know, the stories and.
I think certainly there was a all for one and one for all attitude, and we felt like we were on a crusade. We were going to make converts of everybody, and it had nothing to do with our musical prowess, certainly at that point, but it had to do with a commitment to the band, to what we were doing, and to the fans. I have to say that initially, a lot of the earliest songs were almost us writing about things that we really hadn't experienced. It was almost wishful thinking. By the third album, we were really living it. You know, Strutter was about the women that I would see in the streets in Greenwich Village. There was this huge musical band renaissance of what became known as glitter, the glitter bands, or the kind of like that androgynous look. And the women, the girlfriends, were, you know, wearing silks and satins and fishnet stockings, and they didn't want anything to do with me. But I wrote about that. I wrote about Black Diamond. Literally, by the time we were doing songs like Room Service, that's what I was living. You know, all of a sudden, you know, you go from wishing for something to actually being immersed in it.
Was it, at what point do you start to realize, like, this isn't everything? You know, this actually isn't all that you can want out of life. There's more to it.
Well, you know, that's a tough question, because when you're first exposed to something, how much cake can you eat? You won't know till you eat it all. Um, you know, um, I, 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 I think, at least in my case, it took a bit of time before I went, although this is what I was on a quest to achieve, once you achieve it, I found myself going, is this everything? Some people aspire to something and think it's going to be a cure-all, and are disappointed in a way when that's not the case, and either wind up with a needle in their arm or a gun in their mouth. I made it a challenge. Okay, let's see what else is out there. What else do I need to complete who I am? But it certainly, it gave me the ability to do that. And along the way, I was having a great time. There's no, I have no complaints about any aspect or time period in my life.
There's nothing you look back and wish you'd handled it different, or
I'd like to say that I always did the best I could.
hmm,
And nonetheless, I'd say when our second drummer, Eric Carr, when he had heart cancer, I wish that I had realized that I couldn't fathom the idea of him dying.
hmm,
So I didn't deal with it the way I would today. I think, there were certainly mistakes, I think, made in that period. And again, I was you're limited by your limitations. You're limited by what you know, and how you perceive things and where you are in your life. So um, everything that you do in life gets you to where you are today,
that's right.
good and bad. And you change one thing, you change everything. So even whatever missteps or things that may have happened, they're responsible for where I am today.
When I'm thinking about the fact that for so many years you both, you and Gene, really had dealt with Ace's indulgences and Peter's indulgences, and I mean, thankfully they're still with us. But I mean, I could understand how you might feel like you guys were insulated from that kind of, there were a lot of tragedies in other bands, but you guys really managed to avoid that for so long, and I guess until Eric, and it
I
was
guess
this unusual thing.
it's a very different level when you're dealing with facing somebody's mortality.
Yeah.
When you're facing uh, a diagnosis and a prognosis, and somehow maybe your defense mechanism is to go, he'll beat the odds, or he'll always be like this, you know.
Yeah.
But that was the only thing that I really can think of. Oh, I wish I knew better how that was going to end, and really understood it. That, the finality of death. That's we don't get to deal with that often at that age.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, you guys were real fortunate for a rock and roll group. You guys really managed to avoid a lot of the usual pitfalls, more or less. You guys.
I think that part of what has gotten us to where we are at this point, I mean, Gene and I have been together 56 years, um, is the idea that we can we can we can succeed. We can make things okay. I think that's really what it is. It's more than we'll make it okay. We'll fix it. At some point in life, you start to realize you can't fix everything. It's kind of humbling. Um, you know, um, the only person you can fix is you. So I think there's a sense of being more powerful than you are.
Yeah. Did that feeling of you and Gene sort of being able to weather anything, was there a defining moment of that where you realized, oh, when we got past this, now it feels like, or did it just sort of at some point occur like, yeah, of course, we
No,
were,
I think that maybe it's because we're both survivors innately. It's born into us. You know, our parents were impacted by the Holocaust. Gene's mom was in a concentration camp. My mom had to flee on hours' notice as a child with her family and get on a train and leave everything behind and go to Amsterdam and then flee there. So I think that they're I don't know that it's the children of Holocaust survivors, or I do think that that plays into it, that there's a sense of survival, a sense of not being victimized. You're the master of your own destiny. Uh,
mm,
and when that is challenged, that usually gets my back up that further. If somebody tells me something's impossible, then I have to do it. That's not always a good quality, but I like to think that both Gene and I want to make our own decisions and live our own lives. And Kiss has always been the same. Nobody decides for us who we are or what we are. And that's probably what's kept us around this long is we will stand by our victories and we'll brush ourselves off when we fall. And, there are times we've fallen and we're not prone, either one of us, to stay down.
yeah. Your final full stage show is a year and a half like behind you guys now. Although there's this Vegas event coming up, and we'll talk about that storm. Does it feel weird to have the touring part of your life wrapped up, to have that done after all this time?
Totally, of course. Um, I can fill that time, but I can never replace what's lost. Um, in a sense, it's a death. You miss something, you can't get it back, and you can fill that time, but there's absolutely a loss. Nothing can take the place of 20, 50, 100, 150,000 people in front of you, and the energy and the love that they're giving and the appreciation and what I'm doing. I think ask Michael Jordan, ask any athlete. When you give up something like that, there's no replacing it. You find things to fill the time and fill the time well. But if to say I don't miss it is it, I can miss it. I don't I don't live my life today thinking about yesterday.
Hmm.
It's pointless and it doesn't take advantage of today.
But is there any part of you that reflexively just feels like a tour must be right on the other side of next year? I mean, because you've been doing it's just like periods at home, and then it just almost at some point must feel reflexive to just be like, oh, I'm gonna go somewhere soon to, you know.
Um, I say to people, look, I've been home before for stretches of time. The difference this time is I'm not leaving. Well, so yeah, I can do other things and I can play and I can do things with Gene, or there's lots of things for Kiss to be doing and to move Kiss into the future. But the touring aspect, which has been a major part of my life, is gone.
Hmm. Do you still play at home?
Oh yeah, nowhere near up to this point, nowhere near what I once did. But I was touring. I was playing 5 nights a week. There was recording. So I think that without even planning to, I just took a break. I just I just put down the guitar, and thankfully, when I pick it up, sounds like me playing, you know, muscle muscle memory. Although, I could sharpen the blade a little bit, and I will. But yes, I still play, and music's so much a part of my life, and music has been salvation for me, oxygen for me since I was a kid, since I was 5, 6 years old, and I discovered music or was exposed to it. It's always been my sanctuary.
What inspires you these days when you're around the house to pick up the guitar? Is there something you'll hear or a feeling you'll get or
Oh, um, it's more curiosity. Gee, can I still do it? Um, it's different. It's really different because throughout my life there was always a reason I was playing. I was playing with different bands or to get better or to learn certain things. And right now, it could change tomorrow, but right now, if I don't feel like it, I don't do it. But I'm fully aware that I will. I'm fully aware that, like other things, you take breaks. I think it's important in a lot of senses to get away from things.
it's been as I mean, it's been a year and a half since the last tour. It's been even much longer since the last original album. In all that time, or even since you've stopped touring, do melodies ever still come to you, or a riff, or
Yeah, they do, and I don't feel the need right now to do anything with it. Yeah, you'll hear from so many people, the music business has changed enormously, and what we once sold or other major um, bands, acts once sold, for the most part, that doesn't exist anymore. So you have to be creating for a different reason. And I've known some people recently who put out some fantastic music, and after a week or so, it's off the charts because there just isn't that sustainability anymore. So um, there definitely is a sense of, do I really want to put that much work into something? And even though I know what the outcome probably is going to be, do I want to build up for that kind of disappointment? Uh,
wow.
and that's not. I may say that and be honest about it, but I've known a lot of people who feel that, and the other people who go, "Oh, I create for me and this and that." That's true to a point, but you you did it to become successful, or you would never have played it for anybody. You wouldn't have left your room. So by design, you wanted acceptance, you wanted mass appeal, whatever it was. Otherwise, if you really did it for yourself, you'd keep it to yourself. But once you start putting it out there, if things don't go the way they once did or you anticipate, I I see a point where people just go, "I'll tour," and there are other acts and people who have done that. Look, when it comes down to it, if I wrote "Let It Be" tomorrow and we put it out as Kiss, people would say, "That's great. Play Love Gun." It's just the nature of things.
Yeah,
You go to see the Stones, you tolerate whatever they want to play until you hear Brown Sugar or Honky Tonk Woman.
yeah.
Uh, so if McCartney does a show, if I see it on TV, if I turn off the volume, I'll let you know every time he's playing a new song because the audience sits down. So,
Yeah.
if you want to keep writing, God bless you. I am at a point now where I'm not sure.
You know, I mean, this is one thing I'll say. This is one thing I mean, there's many things to like about Kiss, but one of the things I especially love about you and Gene is you guys have never never shied away from the fact that you wanted to be successful. There's no pretense around it, and to the point that, I mean, and I guess let me ask you this: even, it's amazing, but the self-titled album, um, um, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, like you're to this day still remain disappointed in those albums, even as incredible as they are and as beloved as they are.
Well, because they don't sound the way I envisioned or hoped, and they don't sound the way we sounded live. And we didn't have the know-how or wherewithal at that point to make albums that reflected what we sounded like. That's why it took Kiss Alive to break through, because people loved us and came to see us, but the albums didn't really reflect what they had experienced. So, yeah, I mean, I would like to think that I would like to think you don't love everything you do,
Mm.
because that doesn't leave any room. If everything is great, how great is great? I mean, it's, you know, there's got to be degrees of stuff. And out of all the albums we've done, we always gave it our best. And some of them I listen to and go, or I don't listen to, and I go, at that time there was this going on or that going on. And then there are other albums I think are really good. And then there's some albums I think are great. So um, I would hate to think everything that we do or I do is fantastic, because it's not.
If I had to ask you to rank your top 5 Kiss albums, what would you?
For different reasons. The first has to be Kiss Alive,
Hmm.
because Kiss Alive really captured the essence of the live experience. Now, that couldn't have happened without us going in the studio and enhancing it and surrounding you with people. Live albums were boring before ours. You didn't even know they were live until the end of the song where you heard some clapping. But for Kiss, we wanted an album that immersed you, immersion in the experience, which means being surrounded by people, which means bombs going off that are deafening, um, which means fixing any mistakes or a broken string. People may have, snobs or purists may have looked down their nose at that idea, but the truth is that album is still considered, if not the greatest, one of the greatest, and in a lot of circles, greatest live album ever. Not because everything was live, but because it captured the live experience. So Kiss Alive, um, Destroyer, even though it didn't sound much like its predecessors, but working with Bob Ezrin was such a education, such a schooling, discipline, and upping the writing and putting aside, at least temporarily, all the songs about, you know, sleeping with this one or this groupie or parties, and it it raised the bar. So Destroyer, so many of those songs wound up in our show up until the very end. Detroit Rock City, God of Thunder, Beth, Shout It Out Loud. So Destroyer, um, I would say Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom was a great album by a band that recognized its roots and recognized where it came from and picked up the slack and kept moving forward. I love that album, and I love the spirit that went into it, where everybody knew what they wanted to do. And at our best, and most people's best, I think, comes from trying to make the team or the band or whatever you're involved in better. And that will make you look better than just trying to make you look better. And the team spirit on Sonic Boom was really, really palpable and great album, great album. And again, if Modern Day Delilah had been on Rock and Roll Over, it would be a classic. But you know, songs take decades to gain that kind of patina or to have that life connection of when you heard that song at a certain time in your life. So as time went on, songs could be great, but they didn't have that the luster of being tied to the past. So whether it was Modern Day Delilah or Hell or Hallelujah on
Hell
the
or
next album.
Hallelujah is as good as any, both of those tracks, as good
Yeah.
as any lead off Kiss
Oh,
songs on any,
totally.
come on,
Totally.
ridiculous.
And I just found myself going, that's as good as it gets. And it's a different time now. And people don't connect to songs as timepieces or a sonic photograph of a certain period. So, but long story short, so not really. But so Sonic Boom would be in that top three. And other than that, I would say I like Rock and Roll Over. I like that album. Again, it doesn't sound anywhere near what we sounded like, and that's after Kiss Alive. It was very elusive for us, perhaps because of some of the people we were working with. It just escaped us. We did something with real focus and clarity of what we were doing. So that's really good. I love Kiss Unplugged. That album. I just listened to some of that a couple of days ago. The band at that point was just on fire. No no effects, no amplifiers, no running around, us with guitars and drums and singing our asses off. And also, it gave a chance to showcase the songs because, I've always adhered to the idea that a good song can be played on one guitar. If you have to go, well, wait till you hear the sound effects on this song. No, a great song can be stripped away and it's fantastic. So to hear Sure Know Something or I Still Love You, you hear those songs and there's a wow factor just because it's that good. So Kiss Unplugged, I would put in there. I think that's
That's
four.
that's six. No, that's six.
There you
I think
go.
that's well. Hold on. Well, Alive, Destroyer, Sonic Boom, Rock and Roll Over,
And Kiss
Revenge, and
Unplugged.
Unplugged.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay.
Or is Unplugged going to replace Revenge? You don't have to. You
Um,
can have six. You're Paul Stanley.
yeah, I would replace Revenge with Unplugged. I love the simplicity and the fact that it's undeniable. I mean, it's just four guys with their instruments.
It's cool too. I mean, and it's really, it's one. I mean, Revenge could be that too, but you guys, it's part of you guys being able to have these really unique moments in any decade, and in every decade since you started, you have these moments where you guys still show, well, early on it didn't matter, but you guys show we're still Kiss, we're Kiss, and it's that's there are some, but there's not a lot of groups that are able to every decade have some sort of touchstone where you can say like that's
Yeah,
you
and
know
and for some people that's a flaw. Um, and to me, not at all. I mean, I think that whether it's art or music, rock and roll, whatever, it's about exploring. The band that did Rock and Roll All Night also did Beth, I Was Made for Loving You. It's all over the place, and um, I like that. That's some people would want us to just be one thing, but I don't want to be. And we've never been one thing because we have so many influences. And that was one of the things that I loved about concerts when I was in my teens, is that it was like getting a 3-course meal. You'd go to see a show, and there would be 3 bands who were completely unlike each other. And that that's healthy. When you have an opening act that just sounds like the headliner, but isn't as popular or whatever. Um, I saw so many bills where it was bands that were so divergent in what they were doing, and that was what made it so interesting. So I guess that's what I've always followed.
That era when you're growing up going to concerts too, that's really it's that tiny little era, and really only New York and San Francisco where that was happening, where it'd be like, Ravi Shankar, and then, Moby Grape, and then
Totally.
Otis Redding, and it's like,
Yeah.
what? Like,
I
what?
mean, um, most people won't even relate to this, but I saw Sly and the Family Stone open for Hendrix when their first album came out. But
Wow.
seeing things like Traffic, Iron Butterfly, and Blue Cheer, or Woody Herman's orchestra with Led Zeppelin.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I missed that one, but
Okay.
I saw Buddy Guy in '69 opening for the Who.
Wow.
I saw Otis Redding. I mean, Laura Nero. I mean, there was so much great music, and the beauty of it was like getting a great dinner where there's, I mean, do you want to eat 3 hamburgers? I don't. Do you want 3 chicken dishes? I mean, the whole idea was your palate, your ear was experiencing different things. So yeah, I mean, Mahavishnu Orchestra, with Ravi Shankar, and pick a bombastic band, But that's what made it so great. You didn't just show up for the headliner. You wanted to hear all these bands.
Yeah.
You might learn something. You might learn you liked something you didn't even know that you liked.
Yeah. We were talking about Modern Day Delilah and Heller Hallelujah. When did a Kiss album opening up with a Paul Stanley song? Was that ever decided, or did it just happen? Did it just occur that way? Because every Kiss album kicks off with like an incredible Paul Stanley song, from Strutter to Modern Day Delilah.
I think I've always looked at that the first song on an album should kind of encapsulate what the album is. It should give you a sense of what you're going to get, as opposed to just a random up-tempo song or whatever. So I very often I wrote with the idea that this is the first song on the album. You know, it's like a great preview, a great trailer to a movie.
Yeah. Was there ever a competition within the band or with Gene to, I don't know, I want this, like, this should actually go?
I think Gene, although we've had very brotherly ego competitions, I think Gene's been very pragmatic in that case, and has always seen, I mean, Psycho Circus, again, it was like, okay, what's this album going to be? And, welcome to the show. That's, the whole vibe of it. And you're in the Psycho Circus. So, yeah, for me, it's always been a conscious effort to write the opening track. And also, a big difference between Gene and I always had, Gene and me, it's proper grammar. Big difference between Gene and me has always been that Gene will write songs that are really good and other songs that are not so good. He just writes, and I self-edit. If a song takes work, it takes effort. And if it's not going great, or if I don't think it's great or serving the purpose, I throw it away. I move on. So on most albums, I've written 5 or 6 songs. I didn't write 10 songs. I certainly didn't write 20 songs. I write and go, okay, this is my contribution to the identity of the album.
Yeah. It's amazing too, because you'd even edit like Gene songs if you think about like him bringing you Stanley the Parrot, and you'd be like, well, this is a song, but it's got to go, And I'm sure Gene probably had moments of doing that as well. But yeah,
Yeah, we've had a great relationship. I think at one point we really went off on our own and wanted to do it ourselves, and I don't think that was necessarily beneficial, but certainly in the beginning, um, there was a tremendous amount of collaboration. Even if our names weren't side by side on a song, we always were involved with each other's songs. And later on, once again, even though our songs may not have had both our names on them, almost all the songs we did later, again, talking about Sonic Boom or Monster or any of the later stuff, was a collaboration.
Yeah. You guys are putting together something in Vegas in November. And it's a commemoration really of the 50th anniversary of the Kiss Army.
It started off as something that honestly that Gene and I kind of took a back seat in. And honestly, we reached a point not too far in the past where we both said, you know what, this isn't the way we want it. And it's going to go through some major changes to be what we think it should be. We spent 12 years nurturing a Kiss cruise and what that means and what goes into it and what you get to participate in and the social aspects between fans from 33 countries. So this virtually will become a Kiss cruise in Vegas. Doesn't need a ship. It will have all the familiar touchstones that people love about a Kiss cruise, whether it's bands playing, Q&As, contests, food available, good drinks, social aspects to it. So it started in a way that we kind of took a step back to see what some other people might do. And then we recently found ourselves going, no, this isn't what we want to do or the way we want to do it. So there'll be some announcements forthcoming and a lot of stuff where people are going to be very happy, as I am, that a Kiss cruise. There was no ships available, but a Kiss cruise can take place anyway, and to do it in Vegas at the Virgin Hotel, it's going to be everything that people want and have been hoping for.
A Kiss event in Vegas sounds just as good to me or better than a cruise. I mean,
But it will be great, and it'll be a great, fantastic weekend of all the things that we've loved and that people loved. So whether you're Kiss Army, Navy, cruiser, whatever you are, this is about to become much more. I mean, we're really excited. So I think people should just stay tuned.
Are you and Gene going to do any perform at all? Is that
we're going to do a an no makeup set. We'll play 15 songs, whatever, and Tommy, we're all geared up to do it. We really look forward to it.
And that'll be acoustic, yeah.
That'll be electric.
You're gonna do a full
oh yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So it's going to be great. And the other bands that are going to be announced, it's going to be everything that everybody loves on the Kiss cruises. Um, I think that was missing from what was being planned, and we needed to put our big hands into this, and we needed to steer the ship.
Hmm. Speaking of steering the ship, I want to circle back to, you mentioned Bob Ezrin,
Mhm.
who, you mentioned when you brought him up that he really helped up the writing. And he did end up getting, like, writing credits. I was always curious, how was Bob Ezrin as a producer helping craft songs in such a way that I imagine his fingerprint must have been pretty strong on some of those.
Well,
I don't know if it came from arrangement or
totally.
what was he doing with
Once
you guys.
once we started working with him, the Alice Cooper songs all sounded different to me because I went, there's Bob.
Got it.
Um, he has a terrific point of view, and also, we were kids. We suddenly found ourselves selling millions and millions of albums with a live album, and now what do we do?
Yeah.
We don't want to go back to doing what we were doing earlier because it wasn't working. So, um, having Bob come in, he in the nicest way, he talked down to us. He called us campers. All right, campers. Let's reconvene. And for a while, he had a whistle around his neck. That's pretty humbling for a band that's selling all those albums. But he was also teaching us discipline and raising the bar as writers. It was all really, really helpful to this day. So much of what Bob brought to the band still lives with me.
Have you when's the last time you went back, if ever, and listened to music from the elder?
Um, I'd rather not.
Okay.
You know, um, I think that was the ship that hit the rocks. Um, it was just all wrong. The band was in a very fractured place. Peter was no longer in the band. Ace was, regardless of why, and that's another discussion. But I mean, he was just inebriated all the time, and you know, he didn't like what we were doing. But guess what? When we did Destroyer or Love Gun, we had to get solos out of him quickly enough before he was incapacitated. So, we can say, well, he didn't like the music, but look, all of us were developing in whatever positive and negative ways we were. So, the elder, Ace wasn't around. Um, we were lost. I think it was a progression to a point where both Gene and I forgot why we made music and why we loved music. And it wasn't for the approval of peers, and it wasn't to try to get the approval of critics. It was because we had a passion for the music we made. And incrementally over a series of albums, it led us to the elder. And it was uh, it was delusional. And we were lost, and Bob was lost. We were all lost. I could sit for an hour and talk about what was wrong with it, but it's just it's contrived. And you know, me singing that song, The Odyssey, sounds like Alfalfa trying to sing on the Barber of Seville and the Little Rascals. It was just not. It wasn't Kiss, but honestly, who was Kiss at that point? We didn't even know. We were clueless. I mean, again, Eric was in the band, Peter had left, Ace was AWOL. I mean, and, you know, both Gene and I were living kind of lives of affluence um, and flatulence. I mean, it was just like, it just, it had all gone astray. Um, Once upon a time, the music had teeth. Now we were gumming it. It was just, we were lost. So,
Would you say it was made in good faith though? Like was the intent was a passion at least in the sessions and in the it just maybe
yeah,
didn't
but
come
it
out the
was,
right way.
we can all find ourselves deluding ourselves. We can all find ourselves caught up in something that later on you go, like Dr. Phil, what were you thinking? You know? Um, so yeah, I mean, we did it with the best of intentions, but looking back on it, I think we all just go, you know, what the hell were we thinking? You know, I still remember, you know, both Gene and I were the same. We would play it for people and you can't talk, you know, we have to listen to, you have to listen to this. I remember the record company, Polygram, I think at that time, came to the studio and God knows what they were expecting. I'm sure they were expecting a Kiss album. And they sat down and Bob gave them some, you know, pep talk about this amazing thing they were about to hear. And when it was over, it was kind of like that scene from The Producers, Springtime for Hitler. They're just sitting there, not saying anything. I mean, their mouths were open, and you know, it was we were lost. I remember being on 8th Street in the Village, and I'm walking down the street, and there was a poster up for The Elder, and it was my hand. That's my hand on the cover.
Oh, cool.
The poster was just the door with my hand on it, and I had like a panic attack. It was like, what have we done? So, you know, you sometimes you just bet on the wrong horse or just believe something that's turns out to be not true. We
But
did the best. We did the best we could, but we were lost, and that's the best we could do.
and then again, there are a fair percentage of Kiss fans who like that album and think it's an underrated album in the Kiss quiver, you know, that
Well,
and
well,
so there's something for everyone.
yeah, all 50 of those people should
There's more
enjoy
than
the
that.
album.
There's more than that.
Well,
You mentioned playing it for Polygram and earlier through Casablanca, you guys were on Warner or you know Casablanca was under Warner.
correct.
And you know Warner, the stories of Warner in the day being this sort of you know Burbank, California hippie kind of vibe. Do you remember going to Warner Brothers in the early days, and how were you guys received by that group?
Warner Brothers had quite a prestigious um, roster of artists, and when we signed to Casablanca to Neil Bogart's new label, I'm not even sure that we were aware or knew what it meant to be, you know, a subsidiary of Warner Brothers. We did find out rather quickly that they hated us, and there was a memo sent basically to all of Warner Brothers saying, you know, shit can, you know, the album, you know, and Neil got off Warner Brothers. He took Casablanca from Warner Brothers, but yeah, they were not fond of us.
Did you ever make it out to the offices, or did you ever meet anyone high up at Warner in
No,
those days?
no, I again, I think that I, you know, for all of his um, attributes and pluses, Neil Bogart was almost like a P.T. Barnum.
Mm,
He wasn't the old school record company president. He wasn't Ahmet Ertegun. He wasn't Mo Austin. He wasn't he wasn't John Hammond.
yeah.
He was a different school. And whereas they thought of music as an art or thought of the musicians as artists, I think he was, pretty much saw it as a product. And certainly, whether it was us or then Donna Summer or the Village People, there was a certain air to the company that was promoted differently and was looked upon not only differently, perhaps by the public, but by Neil. Um, Most record companies signed somebody because they believed in them and then would nurture them for 3 albums. Well, nowadays, nowadays, if your first song doesn't do it, you're back to the gas station.
Yeah.
But so no, Neil was different than what was considered, the hierarchy or that kind of elite at record companies. So no, I never met anybody at Warner Brothers. That was over so quickly that we just had this very insular group of Casablanca promotion people and executives.
How was Neil Bogart and Bill Aucoin's relationship? Because they're both very unique characters in
Hmm.
your guys' story.
If there ever was, and I believe there was a fifth member to Kiss, it was Bill Aucoin. Bill was Bill was brilliant, and much like other things that we had done, Bill didn't fit the stereotype. He hadn't been a manager, but it felt right when Gene and I met him. He innately knew what we needed to do, and was he was so tuned in. And as time went on as a manager, he we all looked to him almost like a father figure, although he was basically right around our age. And he also had a great gift for making each one of us feel that we were his favorite. So, he was dealing with 4 babies, um, and he was terrific. And whether it was Bill's idea was to never be seen without makeup, that was Bill. And I was like, oh, gee, it was like, I want to be famous on the street. And Bill said, and you're never going to be, nobody's ever going to see you without makeup. And I was like, what? But he was right. Bill was brilliant. Not to say anything bad about Neil, because Neil understood the commercial potential of the band, although I didn't, and I don't believe he saw it as anything more than a frisbee, just um, something to make, hopefully be successful for a limited amount of time. He came from a background of Buddha Records and some others where they were singles labels with hit singles. So there wasn't a real sense of grooming or long-term potential. But Neil was Neil was part of it. I mean, the drums going up in the air, Neil's idea.
Hmm.
So we were fortunate to have people around us or surround ourselves with people who had contributions to make to us. Gene breathing fire, that was Bill's idea. Bill brought in a magician one day to the office. What's this guy doing here? He breathed fire and scorched the ceiling. And Bill said, who wants to do this? And I sure as hell wasn't going to do it. And Gene, God love him, went like that. And so, but again, I think Bill was thinking much more long term and worldwide. From the day we met Bill, he said to Gene and I, if you guys aren't interested in being the biggest band in the world, I'm not interested.
Wow.
He thought really, really big, but he thought very often quality. That being said, we had Kiss Meets the Phantom and some other glorious missteps, but I think Bill was very, very, very important to the band, and I don't think we ever would have succeeded or survived as long as we did, because there was always a combustibility between the four members of the band, and although we were united in what we were doing, there was also resentments and hostilities, all kinds of stuff. And Bill was the one who could quell and contain that. So Bill was brilliant. He was one of us.
There's a great anecdote in your book about, you guys being out on tour early on, and you come home and you're making, I'm gonna make up a number here, $40 a week. And you're like, oh God, maybe you should make it about $20 more a week. Let me go ask Bill to up this a bit. And you go to the office and you show up and he's got like a hole in his shoe. You're just like, uh-oh, let me not,
Bill put 200, now remember, this is early 70s. Bill had $250,000, I believe, on his American Express card funding us. I don't know how he pulled that off, but thankfully, when Kiss Alive took off, that got taken care of. But Bill, for being a really dapper, great dresser and very fastidious in the way he looked and very upscale, he had his shoes up on the desk, and he had a hole in the bottom of his shoe. And I remember too him having a hole in his sweater that was held together with Scotch tape from the back. So you don't go in there and say, hey, how about another $20? So, but I think that if you experience those things in your life properly, you think of them as things that you'll look back on at some point fondly. And there were a lot of things that went on in our lives where I said, one day I'll look back on this as the good times or the magical times. That was one of them.
Man, it's amazing. It also goes to show, again, just the luck of Kiss, man, that you guys avoided the trap of the manager who's gonna, and I get you guys eventually parted, but in those crucial early days, like, you could have had a manager really screwing you over, but here's this guy walking around with a hole in his shoe so he can finance, the dream, and keep you. That's just, just was like such a beautiful little anecdote that showed how dedicated this person was, and that wasn't always the case for a lot of people,
Yeah, I think though, as far as getting ripped off or robbed, and nothing to do with Bill Aucoin, but I say to people, show me a band that hasn't been ripped off, and I'll show you a band that doesn't know it yet. So that's it's not whether or not that happens, it's how you bounce back from it.
Well, I have a million more questions, but I wanna just say thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'll try to maybe make it out to Vegas because that sounds exciting.
It's going to be great. I mean, the best is yet to come. I mean, once we really unfurl the flag and let everybody see what this event's going to be, they'll be celebrating, and so will I.
Beautiful. So great to meet you.
Likewise.
Thanks for checking out Broken Record on YouTube. If you want to listen to us on the go, be sure to subscribe to Broken Record wherever you listen to podcasts.